Welcome to the DrRcraft CSS image filters tutorial. Filters in CSS can apply graphical effects to images. These include blurring, adjusting contrast of images, and converting the image to sepia. They can help when dynamically changing the rendering or animation of an image, especially when photo editing software is not available. Let's first learn how to blur images. First, let's start by adding the image to our HTML. We can do this by adding an img element, or image for short, and then src, short for source. And then you can set this source attribute to the URL of the image that we want to use. I've already found an image online, so you can just load it here. And now you can see it's really big, so you have to make it smaller. So let's add a style rule for our image element, and then we can make its width shorter to around 200 pixels. That's a much more manageable size. And now we're going to add a blur to the image. To add any type of filter to an image, we use the filter CSS property. And to add a blur specifically, we need to use the blur function. This blur function takes in a radius, which can be a length in pixels. In this case, I'm just going to say 5 pixels. Now you can see it has a 5 pixel blur radius, meaning it's much harder to see the image. We can also reduce this blur radius to 1 pixel, so that's easier to see, or we can increase it. And now we can barely see it. Next, let's learn how we can adjust the brightness of the image. Changing the brightness is similar to adding a blur. Use the same filter property, but instead use the brightness function. And it can take either a decimal or a percentage. We can set it to 0 or 0%, and it'll be completely black because it's fully darkened. We can also set it to something slightly higher, like 0.5 or 50%. And now you can see the image is darkened, but not fully. It's not pitch black. And 100% or 1 is the default value, and values over 100% or 1 will brighten the image. And then we can change it to somewhere in between. Well, now it's slightly brightened, but you can still see the image. Next, let's change the contrast of our image. The contrast function, just like the brightness function, can take either a decimal number or a percentage. 0% means there's no contrast between any of the colors, and it's just gray. However, reduced contrast will make it slightly harder to distinguish the elements in the image, and 100% contrast, or 1, is the default, and you can increase it to make the colors stand out in the image. Now let's look at 2 ways we can adjust the vibrance of the colors in the image. The first method is using the grayscale function. The grayscale function can only take a decimal number from 0 to 1 or 0% to 100%, where 0 means the image just looks normal, and 1 or 100%, meaning it's fully grayscale. You can also put values in between to make it more desaturated. The next method of adjusting the vibrance of colors is using the saturate function. Unlike the grayscale function, the saturate function isn't limited from just 0 to 1 or 0% to 100%. It can go above 1 or 100%. The only difference being that 0 or 0% makes it completely grayscale. 1 or 100% makes it look normal. You can also increase the saturation of the image further to make the colors more vibrant. For the fifth filter in this tutorial, let's look at hue rotation. The way we can rotate hues in images is using the hue-rotate function, and it can take an angle measure. For example, 45 degrees makes the yellows in the image appear to be green and the sky looks purple. We can also rotate it further to see what new colors we get. Now it looks teal with a slightly more magenta colored sky, and we can keep on rotating the hue of the image to see what other colors we can get. Next, let's look at inverting the color samples of our image. The way inversion of color samples is done is using the invert function, where 0 or 0% just looks normal. However, it can go to 50% to make it completely grayscale, so it's in the middle of the inversion. And we can also put it somewhere in between to lower the contrast. And 1 or 100% fully inverts the image. The final filter we're going to look at is the sepia filter. The sepia function, again, takes either decimal or percentage and makes the image sepia, giving it a yellow brownish appearance. 0 or 0% looks completely normal, and 1 or 100% makes the image fully sepia, yellowish brownish colors. You can also set it to something in between to get some slight sepia filter, or you can reduce the intensity of it or increase it. For the final part of this tutorial, let's look at how we can use multiple filters together. To show this off, let's try adding both a sepia filter and invert the colors of the image. So we can first say sepia, and then 1 for 100% filtered, and then the invert function, which will invert the image. And now you can see both of the filters are being done. However, the sepia function is done first, and then the invert function is done, turning that yellowish brown appearance into a blue one. However, if we still wanted it, then we can change the order in which these are placed. We can move the invert function to the start, so that way it now has a yellowish brown appearance again. And we could keep going and add even more filters here. As you can see, it's now very bright. However, if we add it at the start, then it'll look different. This concludes the CSS image filters tutorial. Thank you very much for watching.